Thank you. Thank you. To start this off, I'd like to give you a quote by D.H. Lawrence, who was a writer and a poet. He wrote 2 treatises based on his psychological theories. As a psychologist, he did do a lot of research on children and their development and their growth, which is why I thought this quote was fitting. His most popular quote was, "How to begin to educate a child. First rule, leave him alone. Second rule, leave him alone. Third rule, leave him alone. That is the whole beginning." That's what he said. And throughout the times, things have changed, some good and some bad. Living in constant fear of change naturally as humans, parents tend to raise their children the old-fashioned way, or just hovering over them to make sure that they are safe and sound through this change. Understandable, I suppose, as if there's one thing a parent wants, it's the safety of their child. Along with these changes come this new generation of parents, helicopter parents. Let me explain what they mean. This is not just some teenage slang. Helicopter parents is a type of parent that hovers over a child. Over-perfecting is probably the best word to use here. Constantly looking over your children to make sure that everything is perfect, no harm is in their way, and that any bump in their road, you have to be the one to fix it, whether or not the child caused it themselves. This can actually lead to a lot of harm in the child's future, which is something that is usually blind to the eye of a parent in constant worry. But harm is the one thing a parent wanted to avoid, right? I am an only child, so I'll tell you a quick story. My parents are very overprotective. They can be, at least, very overbearing. I understand I'm the only child they have, and I'm the only child they ever will have. I'm 17 years old, and they had me 15 years after they got married. During the beginning of my sophomore year, I had to ride the bus. I was an inconsistent rider, though, so sometimes I'd ride it, sometimes I wouldn't, depending on whether or not my parents had too much work or not. I needed to ride to school. So all I remember from that time was I was in constant fear, constantly anxious over where I'm going. I was alone. That was the first time I was really, truly alone. I was a sophomore in high school, and I didn't know anyone on that bus. I never talked to the bus driver about where I needed to be. He knew me, sometimes he would drop me home, but he would forget because I was an inconsistent rider. So whenever I would let him drop me off at a place that wasn't close to my house, and I would still walk home because I was too afraid to speak up back then. Because I was so worried, so used to my parents speaking for me and monitoring me, telling me what to do, when to do it, to the point where I couldn't even handle riding the bus. Then I would have rather have walked no matter how far the distance than talked to the bus driver, which now that I think about it, doesn't seem very smart. But the thing is, looking back, if I couldn't handle riding the bus, how would I handle going to college or life after college? This is the type of thing I'm talking about. I can almost guarantee that most parents watching this will be wiping their forehead saying, "Oh, thank God that's not me." But is it? Let me educate you real quick. Shielding them from failure. And I'm not talking about yelling at a child who didn't do their homework or doesn't study for a test. I'm talking about someone who, if their child fails, they believe that they need to be the one to do something to fix it, whether it's forcefully on the child or going to a parent, someone in charge, a coach, a parent, or even one of their friends, actually, and attempting to fix it themselves with or without the child. The overprotecting that I was discussing before, trying to make sure that every bump in their path is removed, even if they were the ones that caused it. The attention is very clear, though, beautiful actually. If not watched and carefully approached, it can lead to a very unhealthy future. Let me explain. Doing for your child what can be done by themselves, what should be done by themselves. But these are just a few small examples of overparenting. What parents fail to realize is the long-term effects. Overparenting can actually hinder the development of a child mentally. The brain, to be precise. The prefrontal part of your brain is where most of the problem solving takes place, if not all of the problem solving. As you get older, you have to continue to exercise that part of your brain to perfect it, just like you do with most things. By over-parenting, you are doing for your child, which is hindering that part of your brain, which is hindering that exercise that your brain needs. By involving yourself too much, you are making it harder for your child to develop this ability, the ability of decision-making and coping skills. Low self-esteem and confidence. When a parent is constantly involving themselves in every part of a child's life, they give the child the impression that things need to always be done with the parent, to the point where when a child gets older and grows up, they don't have the confidence to do things on their own because they're so used to the parents being there. They need to, a child needs to grow up, they need to build resilience. Being used to the parents cleaning up their mess, children will not be able to handle disappointment, a messy roommate, an unfair boss. They will constantly be uncertain of what they should or shouldn't do. Multiple studies have shown actually that in the past decade, children of helicopter parents are always looking for guidance, they're too afraid to make their own decisions, and they're not open to new ideas because they're always so self-conscious. Now, with all of these examples, we wonder what causes helicopter parenting. Well, the most obvious one is fear. We are afraid of change. And with this constant change comes the thought that something bad will happen to our child. We will be there to make sure that they're safe in every way, shape, or form. That's what we want to do. That's the goal. Well, that's what parents want to do. That's the goal. Social media pressure. Seeing all the other children successful online makes parents strive to make sure that their kids have the opportunity to become that successful or even more successful than that. Out of fear, again, parents believe that kids may not be able to meet that standard, then hopping in and doing it themselves, actually. Only children. Having one child, whether it is with or without choice, makes them very valuable. Couples believe that this is their only opportunity, their only chance to make things perfect. And they must do it right the first and only time, sometimes doing it themselves. Now, how do we avoid this? Well, as a teenager, I can tell you that even though we don't speak much, we have a lot going through our minds. A lot of it wants to be said, of course, but having someone to share it with makes it easier. The main thing is to listen. Whether it's how good lunch was, a concern, homework assignment we didn't turn, or a test we didn't do well on, just listen. Through this, we establish trust, the knowledge that our parents will be there for us without taking over. And that feeling is honestly beautiful. With that trust, we know we can come to you for something instead of being afraid to come to you because we're so scared that you're going to go in and do it yourself, Guide instead of dictate. Help us to work towards solving our own problems and not doing it for us. Open-ended questions like, what do you think will happen? What will make this situation better? What do you think you should do? This will help us to work out our own problems. We know that are consequences for our actions. We know there are consequences for our actions. So let them unfold. We need to learn that what we do falls on us, ends up falling on us. Obviously, if it threatens our safety, then yes, you need to step in and intervene. But know the difference between being careful and being paranoid. These natural consequences will have positive effects on us in the future. Please don't keep track of our homework, studying, or extracurricular activities for us. That is our job. We must learn how to manage our own time by ourselves. Because by the time we are faced with independence, the first thing that comes to our mind is, no one will yell at me if I don't do this homework. My parents aren't here to tell me what I can and cannot do. I can do what I want. Mindsets that can get us into even more trouble. Let us fail. Failure is inevitable and is actually a good foundation for success. It is completely normal to fail. I don't mean slacking. I mean genuinely making mistakes and having to deal with it ourselves. Having to deal with the consequences for it. This teaches us much more than success ever could, actually. By failing, we can go into adulthood knowing that things have to be worked for and worked at, not just expecting them to be given to us. Feelings. So much going on. You can validate our feelings without trying to make it better yourself. That there should be a line between emotional support and space. We know you love us, and it's not hovering to express that, but sometimes we don't know how to explain our emotions ourselves. Understand that. Yes, as a parent, you should keep your children safe, but you have to know the difference between protecting them and shielding them. Some things are meant to hit us. Some things are good to hit us, to shape us into a better person and to help us grow. You cannot stop a child from the natural challenges life will throw at them. And attempting to can cause more harm than good. It's what helps us grow, like I said. With this strength, we will eventually have the confidence that you wanted us to have from the beginning, and to become the best versions of ourselves that we can possibly be, which is the one thing that any parent wants. Thank you.